If the Nazis had developed undead zombie soldiers, would Germany have been able to turn the tide of defeat? The story begins on June 6, 1944, the eve of the Normandy landings. An elite team of American soldiers is ordered to French territory. Their mission was to parachute into a German-occupied village and destroy a signal tower jamming the American Air Force by 6 o'clock to provide air support for the landing of 120,000 Allied troops in Normandy. The team arrived right over the main battlefield as the planes passed through the thick cloud cover. First, they were greeted by a barrage of airbursts. Most of the planes had crashed before they reached their intended drop point. A relentless barrage of heavy machine gun fire followed this. The whole team would have been wiped out if they hadn't jumped early. Just then, however, an airburst hit the rear of the plane. Most of the soldiers were sucked out by the strong air current. Boyce manages to jump off the plane with the help of his teammates. But even in the air, he was in danger of being hit by a bullet. He managed to open his parachute but then fell into the water. The damn parachute cord nearly drowned Boyce, but he managed to get his knife out and cut the rope to swim out of the water. Just as he reached the shore to catch his breath, he was fired upon by German machine gun fire. Boyce had to run for the woods. Because he was now in a German position, he could have met the enemy at any moment. Their captain was unfortunately found by a group of German soldiers. Boyce was just about to pull out his pistol to save him when Ford suddenly appeared to stop him. The two men watched as the captain died under German fire. As the core of the mission, Ford knows that destroying the signal jamming tower is the most important thing. If the mission failed because of the captain's rescue, it would have cost the landing force even more. The two men then met the other three surviving teammates. They formed a 5-person team and continued to their destination. But no sooner had they gone than one of their teammates accidentally stepped on a mine. A huge explosion overwhelmed the others, and they had to use their bayonets to move cautiously forward but eventually managed to cross the minefield. When they entered a wooded area, they found a strange animal carcass on the ground. It was a creature they had never seen before. At that moment, a French woman suddenly appeared in the woods. They rush after her and take her under control. Boyce, one of the team, speaks some French. They chatted and learned that Chloe happened to be a villager from a nearby village. She was trying to get out in the dark to collect some supplies. He hates the Germans and is willing to lead the team to the village. She confirmed that the men were American soldiers and took them quietly back to her home. German patrols were everywhere outside, and the church not far away was a German base. The signal tower that needed to be blown up was also inside. The whole base was heavily guarded, with only 4 men on the team. Such a mission would be suicide. To ensure the mission was completed, Ford called 2 other team members to go to the rendezvous point to see if there were any surviving team members. After all, one more person is more powerful. But no sooner had they left than a German officer, Waffner, knocked on the door of Chloe's house. Ford and Boyce rushed into the attic. Chloe had no choice but to let him in. Apparently, Waffner spends many nights here. The 2 men watched through a crack. Just as Waffner is about to move on Chloe, a rifle is put to his head. Ford had to knock Waffner unconscious to keep the mission running smoothly. He also told Boyce to find the 2 other teammates. They had to go ahead with the mission before the Germans found them. Boyce escaped the German patrols and made his way to the outskirts of the base. But what he saw before him terrified him. The Germans were transporting bodies outside. Even though many of them were not completely dead, they were still being gathered together and burned. Boyce knew it was not a good place to stay and left to look for his teammates. But on his way, he was again attacked by a vicious dog. In desperation, he had to climb into a German truck. Little did he know that the truck would be filled with the bodies of his compatriots. He also didn't expect the truck to be destined for the German base. While they're moving the bodies, Boyce sneaks out of the truck. Then he got inside the base. Once inside, Boyce is surprised that this is a German biochemical experimental base. The bodies were used for experiments. Outside one of the cells, a doctor was observing the condition of the subjects and recording the data in a book. After they had left, Boyce looked closer and saw a horrific sight. He then went to a large laboratory. What he saw inside was even more shocking. Hanging bags with tubes connected to them were collecting some mysterious red liquid. Boyce was looking at it with fascination when the bag suddenly moved. Curious, he opened the bag, and a living human was inside, but he was horrible to look at. At that moment, someone came into the lab. Boyce rushes to find a hiding place, only to come to another lab. The red liquid in the syringe was the same as the one he had just seen. Suddenly a woman's voice comes from next to him. Boyce put one of the syringes in his bag and slowly followed the sound. When he pulled back the curtain, he found a woman with only her head attached to her spine. How could she still talk when she was in such a state? He turned around and saw a fellow soldier. He was strapped to a hospital bed with a thick black tube stuck into his body. To save him, the tube had to be removed. The whole process was excruciating, but Boyce managed to get him out. Boyce assisted him, looking for the exit. Finally, at the critical moment, they found a sewer entrance. They both went through the dark sewer and miraculously escaped from the base. By now, the two teammates had returned to Chloe's home. Boyce had also returned with his rescued comrade in his arms. Boyce was still haunted by what he had just seen. He tells Ford everything in the lab and takes out the red liquid he stole. Ford knew the Germans must be plotting something, so he confronted the German officer with the syringe. But Waffner wouldn't let up. Even under torture, he wouldn't say a word. In desperation, Ford abandoned the interrogation and began to implement the plan, and he ordered Chase to take Waffner on the road with him. But when Chase arrived at the loft, he found Waffner unresponsive. He thought he was dead, so he untied the ropes and let Waffner down. Little did he know that he was faking it. He tripped Chase's foot when he wasn't looking. He then grabbed the gun from behind him and shot Chase. Boyce, who had heard the shots, came up immediately and quickly subdued Wagner, but Chase was shot in the vitals and died soon afterward. In desperation, Boyce pulled out the red liquid and injected it into Chase's body. Everyone thought Chase was hopeless and was ready to continue the mission, but then, Chase suddenly sat up again. Everyone was stunned. He felt the wound on his chest but couldn't feel anything. The red liquid can bring people back to life. Not only that, but Chase suddenly had no end of strength. He felt an inexplicable heat. As he took off his clothes, his whole body began to change. He broke the thick pillar with ease. At this point, Chase was a completely different person. He lifted Boyce straight up. Ford tried to stop him, but he pushed him away. In a matter of seconds, several of his teammates were knocked out. Ford knows that Chase is now mutated, so he shot him from behind and knocked him down. Ford immediately confronted Waffner about what the Germans were experimenting with. Waffner was not hiding anything. In order to turn the tide of defeat, they have developed a virus that can bring people back from the dead and turn them into zombie fighters. No one knew the gunfire had brought in a large group of German soldiers. Waffner had sneaked down from the attic when they weren't looking. He also took Chloe's son hostage. By the time they find out, Waffner has joined the soldiers outside. There was an instant exchange of fire. Although Ford shot Waffner, he escaped with the boy. Back in the lab, a wounded Waffner takes a virus and sticks it in his thigh. Despite the doctor's resistance, despite the doctor's repeated statements that the virus had never been tested in vivo, Waffner didn't care. One is not enough, and two more are needed. Soon Waffner mutated. He turns into a terrifying zombie warrior. On the other side, the team is on the move. They used the German soldier they had just caught in the crossfire. They tied him to a motorbike and let him return to the barracks. The German officer guarding the door told him to stop immediately. Little did they know that he had a grenade in his mouth. The soldier kept reminding the officer that there was a bomb on the motorbike, but the officer didn't understand what he was saying. Then he ripped the tape off the soldier's mouth. After an explosion, the iron gate was instantly blown open. The German soldiers were also killed and wounded. Then the two teammates who had been ambushed for a long time began to strafe the remaining Germans, but support kept pouring in from the base. They were outnumbered and had to fight and retreat. Meanwhile, Ford's three people have taken the opportunity to infiltrate the German base through the sewers. Boyce takes Chloe to the lab. Chloe saves her son without incident, but Boyce has more important things to do, so he lets Chloe go first. The two of them return the way they came. No sooner had they climbed into the sewers than Chloe was grabbed by a zombie. To cover her son's escape, Chloe fired her gun, but the bullets did not affect the zombie. Instead, he grabbed Chloe by the neck. In the nick of time, Chloe fired several shots at the walker's head. She tried to escape, but to her surprise, the zombie got up again. On her way out, Chloe suddenly saw a flamethrower. As the zombie caught up with her, she pressed the flamethrower against the zombie. Fire is the most effective way to fight them. Chloe then escaped from the base without incident. Ford had just set up the bomb. As soon as he turned around, Waffner, who had turned into a zombie, suddenly appeared behind him. Ford is no match for him, and he's knocked to the ground in seconds. He was dragged to the lab and hung on an iron hook, just as Waffner is about to inject him with the zombie virus. Boyce arrives just in time to shoot him, but a few shots would have been just as useless. He was also thrown out of the room. Waffner then opened the morgue and released all the zombie fighters inside, and the dangling Ford doesn't give up. He pulls the hook out of his body through the pain. He knew he had to sacrifice himself to defeat Waffner, so he picked up a zombie virus and injected it into his body. As Boyce was about to be drowned by Waffner, Zombie Ford attacked Waffner from behind. The two zombie warriors were instantly locked in a fight, but Waffner was better. Ford is once again knocked to the ground, but Boyce caught the moment, shot the gas can, and blew Waffner away. He then takes Ford and prepares to leave the base, but Ford wasn't going to leave. He knows he's about to lose his mind, and if the virus here spreads, it will bring an even more terrible disaster to the world. Ford ordered Boyce to blow up the lab and the signal tower. As soon as the words were out of his mouth, the still-dead Waffner climbed back up, and more zombie fighters awaken, but Ford was already planning to die with the whole base. When Boyce left, he ignited the bomb in his hand. The huge explosion caused a chain reaction that blew up all the bombs. Boyce ran away from the base at the last minute. The entire base and the signal tower above were destroyed. They completed the mission successfully, with the Air Force backing them up. The Allies were able to win a huge victory in Normandy.